Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the May 1st meeting of the Ann Arbor City Council. If you're able, please rise and join us for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would our clerk please call the roll of council?
Councilmember Dish.
Here.
Councilmember Harrison.
Here.
Councilmember Song.
Here.
Councilmember Watson.
Here.
Councilmember Medina.
Here.
Councilmember Ghazi Edwin. Absent. Mayor Taylor.
Here.
Councilmember Iyer.
Here.
Councilmember Ackman.
Here.
Councilmember Briggs. Here. Councilmember Cornell.
Here.
We have a quorum.
May I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda? Moved by Councilmember Medina, second by Councilmember Watson. Discussion of the agenda. All in favor? Opposed? The agenda is approved. Do we have communications today from our city administrator?
No, Mayor.
We have today the report from our Independent Community Police Oversight Commission, the monthly update from Chair Carter. Is she online? Is Chair Carter in the house? In her absence, we will move on. We now come to public comment general time. Public comment general time is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to council and the community about matters of municipal interest. To speak at public comment time in general time, one needs to have signed up in advance by contacting our city clerk. Speakers in all cases will have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time. Our clerk will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining and when your time has expired. When your time has expired, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Our first speaker is Ken Garber.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. I always like that in lead off. I appreciate the opportunity to comment on DB1 tonight. I understand the rationale for dissolving the Brownfield Land Review Committee. Your resolution cites efficiency and a streamlined process. I agree with that general aim. Right now, developers must pass through a review process that is uncoordinated, inflexible, and time-consuming. This needs fixing. But the Brownfield Committee is not part of the problem. I checked, and over the last 10 years, the committee has met exactly 12 times, barely once a year on average. This is not a burden. And Brownfield oversight is critical. Not so much the site remediation activities, these are vetted by technical experts, but the non-environmental activities need close scrutiny. Here the city is using the Brownfield plan not to clean up a site, but rather to advance other goals. It's sometimes appropriate to reward developers with a Brownfield tax credit for doing something non-environmental that benefits the public.
Mr. Garber, your time will be paused. I think can you turn the microphone on directly ahead of you?
I don't know how to do that.
There's probably a button.
It should turn green.
It should turn green.
We're still on red.
All right.
I can do it. There you go.
Perfect. My apologies.
No, I'm glad to learn something. Should I start over? Or?
It's your time. Whatever you like.
Okay, it's running. So, as I was saying, I understand why you might want to dissolve the Brownfield Plans Review Committee tonight on the basis of efficiency and a streamlined process, and I agree with that general aim. Right now, developers pass through a convoluted review process that's inflexible and needs fixing. But the Brownfield Committee is not part of the problem. As I was saying, I checked, and over the last 10 years, the committee has met exactly 12 times, barely once a year on average. Sometimes, some years, not at all. This is not a burden. Brownfield plan oversight is critical, not so much the site remediation activities. These are vetted by technical experts, but the non-environmental activities need close scrutiny. Here, the city is using the Brownfield plan not to clean up a site, but rather to advance other goals. It's sometimes appropriate to reward developers with a Brownfield tax credit for doing something non-environmental that benefits the public. But this is tricky. There is no clear line between a useful tax trade-off and a taxpayer giveaway to the developer. We need to be mindful of bad policy, overpaying, and favoritism. Staff negotiates these deals out of public view, so they require sunlight. And once adopted, TIF tax credits are invisible. They don't show up on property tax bills, on millages, or in the city budget. The affected government entities, city, county, school board, district library, and mental health, often don't even know that they're missing the millage revenue, which can run into the millions just for non-environmental. The city is effectively deciding for all these entities. That's another reason for strict oversight. So these plans, especially the non-environmental elements, need careful scrutiny on the front end. That's why council voted unanimously in April 2003 to establish the review committee. Please keep it intact. This is a very capable city council, but you simply do not have the time or the bandwidth at your meetings to fully vet these complex and opaque plans. You may argue that the city's Brownfield policy, adopted in 2019, reduces the need for review. In fact, it adds a layer of complexity that makes separate review even more important. By dissolving the committee, you are also eliminating one of two chances for public comment. In conclusion, this committee poses no burden and provides needed oversight for the discretionary removal of millions in taxpayer dollars from the tax rolls for non-environmental purposes. Please do not dissolve it tonight. Thank you for considering my comments.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ed Vilmetti.
Hi, my name is Ed Vilmetti. I live at 1210 Brooklyn Avenue. I was enlightened by Ken Garber's description of the Brownfield Plan Review Committee's infrequent meetings. I think I've been to 2 of those 12 meetings over the span of the last 10 years. I remember waiting a long time for minutes for some of them. One of the things that I think he brought up, and I'll repeat, is just the relatively light administrative burden for this committee relative to the relatively large sums being expended on brownfield oversight, brownfield remediation, and the tax dollars that go with that. A couple hours a year of oversight and a couple hours a year of listening to public commentary on these sorts of efforts seems like a good investment. The challenge with brownfields is that as a city, we tend to forget what came before us. We forget that there was a chemist living at and doing his chemical experiments at what is now the Science Center. We forget where all of the landfills and dumps were. We just forget. Like people from 100 years ago are not around now to tell us where not to go. And so we're rediscovering, or like some people know, of course, but most people don't, just how expensive it is to take land that we've destroyed and bring it back up to a space where it can be reused. And I think just for the public stewardship of the land that's under the city's orbit, I think it's a good idea to keep this function visible. I did look for other organizations that also have brownfield oversight, and I did find the county, which does a pretty credible job of meeting on a regular basis and reporting on a regular basis their efforts. An equivalent web search of the city website was not anywhere near as useful. So I guess the request is if you're going to decide to remove the review committee, my ask would be please put a mandate to report out on brownfield activities on perhaps an annual basis to describe locations under use and the funds expended or not collected, and make sure that people can keep tabs on bad decisions of the past, hopefully remediated in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ralph McKee.
Ralph McKee, phone number 556. Go ahead.
Hello, Ralph McKee, 5th Ward. First topic, Brownfield Committee. I would echo the comments by the two preceding speakers. I think they were well thought out. I just want to say this. The committee currently has the task of reviewing multi-million-dollar brownfield TIF plans, 1 or 2 a year. One of the policy standards previously set is that a developer asking for TIF dollars for non-environmental items has to give a percentage to affordable housing. The committee recently, including some new members, overrode a staff recommendation of denial on the village project because the developer didn't propose any housing dollars in return for the non-environmental items, and then recommended dissolving itself. I understand that Councilmember Song said a while back, essentially, don't worry about this. The county also has to approve and does its own due diligence, so there's other regulatory bodies here. The county just recently met on the same village project, and several commissioners said, essentially, we should defer to the city. So it appears that's really not a viable solution. It's our oversight, the city's oversight, that is going to essentially be potentially rubber stamped by the county, and the commissioners essentially said that, and so did the person in charge of that for the county. These are big dollar projects. This is big affordable housing dollars. I think shirking responsibility to carefully review these plans is a mistake. Next topic, the Brook Street construction. The first issue, the bid process. There have been some past discussions, some heated, of the best value policy. There were often memos describing the bid amounts along with the differences in contractor practices. To be transparent, we should be able to see the additional amounts we're paying over the low bid and what we're presumably getting for those extra dollars. But all the contracts on today's agenda, at least as far as I could tell, don't have that information. They just have the raw scores. That's a pretty good way to prevent any critiques of the bid process. You can't see the additional dollars, and you have to guess what the perceived value was. On several recent contracts, the deciding factor was worker development. What was that? An apprenticeship program, maybe? Better training? Isn't the public entitled to have some idea of what we're actually getting for the extra dollars? As to the project itself, I live a block away. I just hope that the promise will be kept, is that there will be some curb bump outs to save some of the dozens of mature trees which are in the path of the proposed sidewalks. I walk that street regularly and with no safety concerns, and I'll be sad if all the trees are cut down, to say nothing of the last climate benefits of having them. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Henry Herskowitz.
Good evening. I'd like to respond to the rather personal comments I received from council members when I spoke here on April 17th. I do not wish to respond in kind. Rather, I come before you tonight with understanding. I've spoken about the Holocaust at least a dozen times prior to this evening. No council member, past or present, has corrected any of the claims made during those 12 appearances. How do most people, myself included, come to understand this historical event? I offer Casablanca, Sophie's Choice, and Schindler's List. I also offer the Holocaust museums we have locally and nationally, and the constant reminders the press reiterates again and again. My friend refers to this as the mighty Wurlitzer, spinning the same songs over and over. In other words, we have been coaxed, not logically convinced, into our knowledge, in quotes. And as they say, you cannot argue a person out of a position they didn't argue themselves into. When people are presented with facts that run counter to what they assume they know, a great cognitive dissonance sets in. They then have two choices. Either consider what is being said to have possibilities of being true, or assault the character of the person saying them. It's human nature, not necessarily mean-spiritedness. Consider the first choice. I'm sure you all have. What happens if one of you says publicly that there might be some merit in Henry's words to date that have not been challenged? Do you really think you'll win re-election? Look what happened to Ali Ramlawi after he accepted a small donation from me. He's no longer here. What if one of you votes to suspend military aid to Israel? I think we all know the answer. Reasonable people can disagree, using reason and not emotions. And I hope that as I continue to address this vital topic, reason and logic, along with respect, will prevail. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jean Henry.
Hello. I'm going to tie my tongue and not respond to that last speaker. Hi, Council. I am one of the many in our community who knew Jude Walton and counted on her to be community engaged, honest, forthright, generous, and solutions-oriented, and compassionate. In that spirit, I'm here to ask you to create a city task force on gender-based violence. There is no denying that Jude's murder was the result of gender-based violence. There is no denying that our city has failed to seriously address this pervasive problem. It is long past time to take action. Sexual assault is the only crime, violent or property, in which our city has a higher incidence rate per capita than the rest of Michigan and the country at large. That rate has increased over the last 10 years. 43% of U.S. women experience some form of sexual violence. 1 in 3 U.S. women experience some form of physical violence. That's over 20,000 women each impacted in this city. Black, Indigenous, people of color, transgender, non-binary, and lower-income citizens experience higher rates of gender-based violence along with increased severity, duration, and fatality. Prior incidents of gender-based violence is the single greatest predictor of mass shootings. 63% of all mass shooters have histories of gender-based violence. Aggression towards women, including stalking, harassment, as well as physical violence, is predictive of other violent crime. I understand that domestic violence victim services are provided by outside agencies, usually at the county level. I am not calling for duplicating those services. I am asking for prevention. A city resident who feels unsafe calls city emergency responders. Jude once called the police department for aid when an ex was refusing to leave her home. They wouldn't intervene until a man with influence in the city called and demanded action on her behalf. Over 10 years ago, I remember Jude complained about people using her backyard as a shortcut to West Park from Delanis and downtown. When she and neighbors applied for a fence permit, they were denied because their homes were in a floodplain. Her murderer accessed her home from the rear and was staying at Delanis. Please take a moment to let that sink in. Those are just 2 stories from Jude's experience. There are more which signal opportunities lost to increase her safety as a single woman living alone. And there are so many more citizens with story of gender-based violence and harassment to tell. Each of those stories could lead to an action at the city governance level that would show we as a city are willing to step up to the challenge of responding adequately to the risk posed to vulnerable citizens. The research is abundant. The funding for this work at the state and federal level is abundant. We have a community capacity and expertise. We have gender-based violence programs at every level of government except in this city.
Thank you.
Do we have the will? What would you do in your place? Please honor her legacy by seriously
Thank you.
considering this request. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Lauren Sargent.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Lauren Sargent. I live on Ember Way in Ann Arbor. I'm an Ann Arbor resident for almost 40 years, a fourth-generation Michigander. And tonight, I am urging all of you here to exercise courage. Please speak unanimously with one clear voice. Ann Arbor will stop permitting investments in toxic and climate-disrupting gas infrastructure. No vote, or not even bringing a vote before us, is a no vote. It's a no vote on climate action that we absolutely urgently require. We're in a declared climate emergency. We have an A20 goal of powering our grid with 100% renewables by 2030. There is no possible way that we can even approximate this goal unless we stop permitting investment in fossil fuel infrastructure right here in Ann Arbor. We need to electrify everything and power it with renewables and efficiency. We at Washtenaw 350 have a motto: when you're in a hole, first stop digging. Gas infrastructure is a huge, gaping hole, perhaps the largest that we here can control. We need to cut that off immediately. Today I just read that in a part of southern France, there are 3 communes that have no water. That's 3,000 people who have no water. There are forest fires raging in those areas that don't normally even start until maybe July or August. And they've cut off water for everything except for hygiene and emergency medical use. No agriculture. That's today. The Energy, Environmental, and Renters Commissions have all passed resolutions calling for no new gas infrastructure for new and substantially remodeled buildings. Please schedule and vote yes on a gas ban. You, as council members, are the only ones who have the ability to make this policy a reality. Please, we need to put this community's money where our mouth is. We need to act as if our hair is on fire. The forests already are. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Petals Sandcastle.
Petal Sandcastle, if you're on the phone, can you please raise your hand? Mayor, I don't see the caller on Zoom.
In the caller's absence, we'll move on. Our next speaker is Blaine Coleman.
For 20 years.
Signs down, can't see the podium, can't see the front.
This sign, it says, my sign, which Ed Vielmetti is objecting to, says, "We are against military aid to Israel." This is the language of our resolution. For 20 years, we have been demanding that this city council approve a resolution against military aid to Israel. In other words, we've been demanding that you stop funding the Holocaust against the Palestinian people. We have demanded that you at least allow a resolution objecting to the funding of this Holocaust against the Palestinian people. And you have thrown all your weight into silencing any such resolution. You have thrown all your weight into making damn sure that the Palestinians keep getting killed with your money and with your party's political support. After this public speaker part of the meeting is over, you're going to be talking a lot of shit about the Holocaust. Oh, God, how you hate the Holocaust. Yeah, it did happen. Yeah, 6 million Jews were killed by Hitler. Yeah, actually 27 million Russians were also killed by Hitler. Somewhere between 5 and 15,000 gay people were killed by Hitler. Somewhere approximating maybe 500,000 Roma, gypsies, were killed by Hitler. Yeah, that all happened. But you don't give a good goddamn about Holocausts because, whatever you say, because you have made sure that the Holocaust against the Palestinian people continues. You have made sure that no resolution has been even allowed to reach the City Council for a vote in over 20 years. Your own Ann Arbor Human Rights Commission in December 2003 urged you to approve a resolution against military aid to Israel. You reacted by stripping the commission of their staff, forcing out the chairperson of that commission, and replacing its members. And there sits Jen Iyer, who took money for her campaign from old friends of the Israel Defense Forces. This is the kind of city council we have now. This city council continues to push the Holocaust against the Palestinian people. Shame.
Our next speaker is Mojan Savabiasafani.
Hello, Ann Arbor. Happy May Day. Today is the International Workers' Day across the globe, and workers show solidarity with each other. And I am showing my solidarity with working people of Ann Arbor. I am here to say that over 80 years ago, a Holocaust did happen. 6 million Jews and 27 million Russians were murdered by Nazi Germany. A Holocaust did happen 80 years ago where 27 million Russians and 6 million Jewish people were killed by Nazi Germany. Many Germans stood by and watched as Jewish people were pushed into gas chambers and murdered. Many Germans stood by and watched that happen. Ann Arbor City Council is doing the same thing while a genocide, a Holocaust of Palestinian people is happening right under their noses. They are pushing Palestinians into their extinction. And they want us to believe they are not racist. They are racist. A Holocaust happened 80 years ago, and people like Ann Arbor City Council allowed it to go on. At the same time in Germany, when people were being killed by Nazis, very few Germans stood up and said no. Those people are rarely remembered. I am those who stood up against the genocide. I am among those who stands against murder of Palestinians. And you are doing exactly what German public did while Nazis were murdering Jewish population. You are the racist, Mayor Taylor. You are the racist City of Ann Arbor City Council people. You are the racist. You are the anti-Semite. I am not. I am against racism, and I am against all kinds of Holocaust, and I have fought against all kinds of racism. My record shows it. It is shameful that you hide behind 80 years ago Holocaust and allow one to happen right now. It is obvious you're lying. It is obvious you're racist because you use every excuse to halt, to stop our demand, which is the demand of thousands of Arabs in this community, that we want no more military aid to Israel. You stop that. You smother us. No more military aid to Israel.
Thank you.
and I don't ever want you racist to ever thank me.
Our next speaker is Jeff Hayner.
Yeah, thank you. As I was sitting there, and these folks have been coming down here, 18, 19 years now, and nobody even
You
seems to...
had every chance to help us and
I
you
know,
didn't.
she's right.
Shame on you.
She's absolutely right, and I accept that. I accept her shaming. She's right. I don't mind that she's interrupting me. I had every chance to act on that, and I failed to act. And it's to my great shame that I did. I apologize to the Palestinian community here in Ann Arbor that I failed to act. Well, not here. So hopefully we can provide a world forum here. I'm here to talk about the dissolution of the Brownfield Committee, the Brownfield Review Committee, which I sat on when I was on City Council. And it actually occurred to me that I think the mayor and I are the only two people in this room that have served a full term here in this chambers. And for certain, I'm sat on more of those Brownfield meetings than anybody else here in this room. There's no doubt about it. And I think it's shameful, to use the terms of our previous speakers, that you're going to get rid of this committee, that you're going to take the trust that the electors of the city, all 121,000 some of us, gave to this body to oversee these important programs that have long-term implications for the health of our economy, that are economic tools that can be used for good, that are environmental tools that, when used properly, can be used for good. And you're going to punt and shirk your responsibility. You're going to really set aside the public's trust in what you can do here at this table. And I think we've had pushing $90 million in tax, foregone taxes in the last 6 years. That's a lot of money we've given away. And I do a couple loops every day around where they're doing the Mishcon job, which is use some tax credits down there on the Mishcon site. And the Mishcon site and some other sites here in our community have responsible parties. There is no way that we should be giving away tax dollars when there's a responsible party. And some of the mayor's toadies I've run into on my walks around there, and they don't have a clue what this is about. They say, isn't it great that they're cleaning this up? Well, the they is us. We're the they. Our tax dollars are cleaning this up, and you want to shed that to the county? You want the county to be the ones to decide that? So that 9 people, only 3 of which have any kind of geographic relationship to the city limits, are going to make those decisions for you? It's shameful. And I would like everyone to hear, before they say yes or no to this, to tell us why it is you don't think that the body that is charged in the law, the local unit of government, doesn't get to have a say in this, and thereby the 120,000 people that you represent.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Scott Fitzpatrick.
Thank you for your time. I'm here to speak in favor of the Unarmed Crisis Response and Wellness Check proposal with a personal story, a story of mental health. My wife and I married in 2018 and enjoyed 2 years as newlyweds. Then COVID hit. In quarantine and also working from home, we spent 24 hours a day and 7 days a week together for years. Through counseling, we also learned that both my wife and I suffer from severe childhood trauma. For everyone in this room who has had a relationship or is in a relationship, I think can respect the fireworks that recipe just cooked up. In the fall of last year, an argument rose to crisis level. For the first time, I was scared. It was late on a Sunday evening when neither one of us could reach our counselors. I felt so over my head, I called 911. A friend had recently told me about unarmed crisis wellness checks. I asked the dispatcher, please send an unarmed response team for a wellness check. 30 minutes later, 3 police cars arrived. We both cooperated, but I believed I was asked leading questions while in a vulnerable state for the purpose of making an arrest. I don't fault the police. They were extremely compassionate and helpful, But because my wife had self-harmed and because I had a small cut and a bruise, my wife was arrested. But this is not a story with a sad ending. My wife and I got the counseling. We're in a great place together, and we're overcoming a lifetime of childhood trauma together. We've learned to support each other and are in a functioning and healthy marriage. Spending the night in jail was extremely traumatic for my wife. It was also costly. Legal fees, logistics, hotel rooms, court costs put expenses over $10,000. But I can never erase the vision of my wife being walked to a patrol car in handcuffs, especially when I feel unarmed mental support was all I was calling for. Although the case was dismissed, my wife still has an arrest on her record, and I now fear for her citizenship. I loved reading the report on the unarmed crisis support team's status. Last year, it looked like money from the Federal American Rescue Plan Act was directed to the program. And according to a group called the Coalition for Revisioning Our Safety in Washtenaw County, that funding would allow the program to operate for the first year. Could that be the beginning? While other sources of funding are secured. I sincerely hope so. I can start treating, if we can start, thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Tom Stolberg.
Tom Stolberg, phone number ending in 534. Go ahead.
Good evening. This is Tom Stolberg, calling from Lower Town in Ann Arbor, and I'm calling to ask to speak about the resolution to dissolve the Brownfield Plan Review Committee and would advise against it. The previous speakers have done a wonderful job of covering many aspects of this. So I'm going to broaden what I'm going to say about it into what I see as a pattern of deregulation and reduced oversight. Now, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a capitalist, I believe in capitalism, but I believe in regulated capitalism. I don't want the Wild West in capitalism, and I don't want the Wild West in government. Government has a role to play. As one of the speakers said, you are our representatives. Whenever you reduce the amount of oversight, public scrutiny, public hearings, public information that's provided, it reduces that window of the public, of the people you represent, of the citizens of Ann Arbor, into how our government works. This particular item has to do with a lot of money in a relatively infrequent amount of time that this body needs to meet. But it's very important. The whole function of the Brownfield TIF aspect of cleaning up sites, especially orphan sites, is very valuable to get sites cleaned up that otherwise might not. But a lot of money changes hands. A lot of money, tax dollars, are involved. Public scrutiny should be not just allowed, but embraced. Journalism is reduced these days. We all know that. Therefore, we need more public scrutiny, not less public scrutiny, whenever we have the opportunity. I believe dissolving this committee reduces the public scrutiny, reduces your helping us to have a window into how government works and how government deals with our tax dollars. There have been some good things that have come out of the Brownfield TIF. In my neighborhood, in the Lower Town project, unfortunately, $9 million of affordable housing went by the wayside with an improper decision.
30
in
seconds.
the Brownfield TIF, 15 units of affordable housing. We lost 93, but we got 15 in a Brownfield negotiation there. Just one small example of where a council member was proud of what he felt he negotiated into a Brownfield tax increment financing situation. So there are opportunities for you to make things better and for us to have a window into how you do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Alan Haber.
Mr. Haber, phone number ending in 083. Press star 6 to unmute your phone. Mr. Haber, phone number 083. Press star 6 to unmute your phone. Mayor, it appears Mr. Haber is on Zoom, but he isn't unmuting his phone.
Mr. Haber, to unmute your phone, press star 6. Star 6.
Mr. Haber with the phone number ending in 083. You can speak if you press star 6.
Mr. Haber, if we are unable to hear you in the absence of our being able to hear you, and I think we're going to move forward. Is there any communication from council? Councilmember Dish.
Thank you. I want to say that last Monday, Councilmember Redina and I, Senator Schenck, Irwin, and Somerville, as well as Commissioner Robbie, toured the city's materials resource facility, our sorting facility, where our recycling is processed. It's remarkably clean, it's well organized. It has enormous blocks of tin, aluminum, plastic bottles, all of these things that go to commodity markets. But we also saw a few blocks of plastic film. These blocks contained giant dog food bags and other forms of containers that cannot be recycled. We want to redouble our commitment to get these out of our waste stream. RAA is pairing up with nonprofits zerowaste.org and Perpetual to scale up our reusable restaurant container program citywide. Maybe some of you participated in the pilot that we had a couple of years ago, and that remains in place at El Harissa, among other places, where you get your takeout food in a container that you can bring back. They will clean it and give it to you again, perhaps not in that very minute, but know that it remains in circulation. So RAA is pairing up with zerowaste.org and Perpetual to make this a citywide program. And they would like your feedback to help them figure out how to do that. So look for a series of interactive community workshops from May 22nd to 25th. I will provide more details when I hear them. And I also received some drop-off station fee waivers. This is where you take things that you cannot curbside recycle, like styrofoam, metal items, textiles, motor oil, cooking oil. This waives the $3 entrance fee. I'm going to set them over here for you. And I want to say finally that I celebrated Earth Day in Ward 1 at Leslie Science and Nature Center, where I enjoyed the city's water taste test. And I want to tell you, well water, bottled water, city water, I preferred city water with almost no coaching.
Councilmember Ackman.
Thank you. As most folks know, City Council approved a resolution in March directing the city administrator to work with interested utilities to begin a responsible transition to clean, safe, renewable energy for heating in Ann Arbor. The work on that negotiation is beginning, and the city would like your feedback. As a result, they're hosting 2 listening sessions. They're virtual, May 11th and May 18th at 6 p.m. You need to register to get the Zoom link. You can find the link by typing in heating franchise listening session into your browser. Thank you.
Councilmember Cornell.
I wish my update was as exciting as Councilmember Dish's. I'm all in on the MRF too. Just really quickly on Councilmember Briggs and I are hosting listening hours every month, and this month our listening hour the schedule needs to be changed from our regular cadence, and so instead of the Sunday before the last City Council meeting of this month, we will be meeting on Saturday, May 4th at 4 p.m. at the A2AC on Liberty. Oh, May 13th at 4 p.m. Thank you.
Councilmember Iyer.
Thank you. We will talk about this in much greater detail when the item comes up on the agenda, but I did want to address it in my council member comments because we did have so many public commenters address the Brownfield Review Committee dissolution. And so I just very briefly, for those who may be tuning in and then maybe tuning out before we get to that point on the agenda, what we are doing is going to increase public participation and transparency regarding the Brownfield review process. Instead of a small committee that meets, quietly when the public isn't paying attention and receives the presentation from the developer at that point, that part is going away. The entire body here will receive that presentation from the developer and will be able to consider the plan as a body. So that provides greater public scrutiny, it provides greater transparency, and it provides for the entire of the council to ask the questions of the developer. It also streamlines the process, yes, because we don't want to ask the developer to come give that presentation twice. They shouldn't need to do that. That just adds extra cost to the development process, and that is something that we are trying to address because we're trying to bring down those costs where possible in order to make development in our city more affordable and to open it up to more people who may not have access to loads of capital. So we can see some different types of developers doing projects in our community. So again, for those who may be tuning out, we'll talk about it again later, but it is going to increase transparency and public participation, not decrease it.
Councilmember Harrison.
Thank you. I just wanted to announce that there will be an equity-centered coffee chat hosted by myself, Councilmember Song, Councilmember Watson, and Councilmember Ghazi Edwin, and that will be on Sunday, May 21st from 1 to 3 p.m. at Wheeler Park. So we hope to see you there.
Councilmember Song.
Happy May 1st. Today is also the beginning of Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. There are some events in town. Book Suite is hosting 3 readings. Tuesday, May 16th, 9 to 10, Shirley Higuchi, Setsuko Secret, Heart Mountain and the Legacy of the Japanese American Incarceration. On Thursday, May 18th, 10:30 to 11, Graceland, author of Once Upon a Book. Wednesday, May 24th, 1 to 2 p.m., Robin Ha, author of Almost American Girl, an illustrated memoir, as well as Cook Korean, a comic book with recipes. I hope folks can join us in these community events. It's family friendly, and considering that the Asian American community in Ann Arbor is the largest ethnic community in the city at about 18%, I think we can expect a good showing. Thanks.
Further communication from council. Couple of things from my part. I just want to report out super briefly. I had the pleasure of attending the city's Summit of the Americas in Denver, Colorado, with Dr. Schultz last week, and participated in a number of interesting portions. Attended a master class with respect to reducing the use of fossil gas in communities, hearing a great deal about the intersection between gender equity and municipal governments, particularly, as one of our speakers noted, with respect to gender violence, and particularly interested in the work being done in Oakland, California, which is, I think, it seems from the group to be unique and instructive. Further and finally, participating in a roundtable with respect to the advancing of an equitable clean energy transition. This was a number of municipal leaders and other organizations from the State Department to ICLEI, with some Department of Energy support as well, and municipal leaders from South America, Central America, and North America. It was quite an event. I'd like to recommend the following appointments for your consideration: to the Airport Advisory Committee, Greg Ferris; to the Ann Arbor Public Art Commission, Allison Buck; to the Building Board of Appeals, Hugh Flack, David Arnsdorf; to the Cable Communications Commission, Anthony Ramirez; to the City Planning Commission, Danelle Weich, Shannon Gibb Randall, Sadira Clark; to the Commission on Disability Issues, Matthew Solomon; to the Design Review Board, Richard Mitchell; Tamara Burns; to the Downtown Development Authority, Alexandra Deek; to the Elizabeth Dean Fund Committee, Lynn Nibel and Brooks Curtis; to the Energy Commission, Alex Zettelman; to the Housing and Human Services Advisory Board, Anna Erickson, James Downing, and Amanda Carlisle; to the Housing Board of Appeals, Todd Zaleski; to the Human Rights Commission, Judah Garber; to the Huron River Watershed Council, Richard Norton; to the Local Development Finance Authority, Stephen Rapundolo; to the Park Advisory Commission, Ann Marzen; to the Public Market Advisory Commission, Lisa Young; to the Recreation Advisory Commission, Kurt Zboda; to the Renters Commission, Robert Kelly, Zechariah Farah; to the Transportation Commission, Molly Kleinman; to the Zoning Board of Appeals, David DeVarty. Also, too, there will be a resolution to reappoint non-resident electors to Ann Arbor boards and commissions, who will be: to the Airport Advisory Committee, Mark Perry; to the Ann Arbor Public Art Commission, Mary Thiels, Jamal Buford; to the Building Board of Appeals, Robert Hart; to the Downtown Development Authority, Mika Bartlome; to the Energy Commission, Cherish Smith, Jonathan Overpeck; to the Housing Commission, Stephen Daniels; to the Human Rights Commission, Pamela Meadows; to the Huron River Watershed Council, Molly Majoweski; to the Public Market Advisory Commission, Eric Farrell; and to the Renters Commission, Arthur Redmond. To the Parks Advisory, and then I would also like to recommend the following nominations for your consideration: to the Parks Advisory Commission, Therese Perlowski; to the Elizabeth Dean Fund Committee, Molly Brookshire; to the Housing Human Services Advisory Board, Peter Stultzker, partial term, Rosanita Ratcliffe, and Ellen Rabinowitz. That was last year, last cycle. Gerber? She's on. Thank you for asking. May I have a motion, please, to approve the consent agenda? Moved by Councilmember Briggs, seconded by Councilmember Cornell. Discussion of the consent agenda. Councilmember Iyer.
I'd like to pull CA5 for discussion.
Further discussion of the consent agenda. Councilmember Cornell.
I would like to pull item CA3 for discussion.
Further discussion of the consent agenda. All in favor of the consent? Is that discussion or a vote? You're so excited to vote. I am too. All those in favor of the consent agenda with the exception of CA5 and CA3, please say aye. Opposed? The consent agenda is approved with the exception of CA3 and CA5, with 10 council members present, all voting in the affirmative, thus satisfying the 8-vote requirement with respect to CA1. CA6. That is all. CA5, resolution to approve a construction contract with Fonson Company, Inc. for the West Madison Place Water Main and Resurfacing Project in the amount of $2,122,850 and to appropriate $1,133 in internal contributing funds. Moved by Councilmember Iyer, seconded by Councilmember Briggs. Discussion, please, of CA5. Councilmember Iyer.
Thank you, Mayor. So I spent several hours on Friday, which appropriately was Workers' Memorial Day, looking at the worker safety information included in Fonson's proposal for CA5. What I found was highly concerning and prompted me to also review an earlier project that we approved here at the table in March with that same company. So for both RFPs, Fonson listed the same incomplete OSHA training information, OSHA certificates for only 4 employees. 3 of those certificates were from 2011, along with an email indicating that just 7 more employees were signed up for training sessions in January and March. However, in both RFPs, under a different section, the section for ratio of masters to apprentices, they list more than 24 other employees, none of whom are OSHA certified or will be, according to their own proposals. So in contrast, the contractor who won second place in this bid submitted OSHA certificates for 34 of its employees. So from these proposals, Fonson admitted and revealed that they have just 2 laborers who will supposedly have the training by the time construction begins. The 9 other employees who have the training certificates are foreman or management. It begs the question, where are the OSHA certificates for the people who will be doing the actual work? Because I know it won't be the foreman or the management. Therefore, before I can feel comfortable approving this proposal tonight, I'm going to propose an amendment that makes it crystal clear to Fonson and to everyone else that we mean it when we say in our RFPs and in our contracts that companies must provide evidence that all craft labor that will be employed by the bidder on city projects has or will have, prior to commencement of the project, completed at least an authorized 10-hour OSHA construction safety course. So if we can circulate the amendment, this would be adding a resolved clause. It says, resolved, the contract shall be amended to include provisions that require the contractor to provide the names of all craft laborers who will work on the project and sufficient evidence that each of them have completed the prescribed OSHA safety training requirements prior to work commencing on the project, and that failure to provide such evidence shall constitute a breach of contract.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Hackman. Is that friendly to the body? Friendly to the body.
Okay. Great, thank you. I just want to conclude by saying, I've asked staff to ensure that prior to construction, also beginning on the earlier project that we, yep, is it?
It is.
Okay. I'll come around the second time.
Excellent. Further discussion? Councilmember Iyer.
Thank you. Picking back up, so I have asked staff to ensure that prior to construction beginning on that project that we already completed, that Fonson also provide the list of employees to be utilized on that project along with their OSHA certificates. And I was told that unfortunately it was not a planned part of the process, but now it will be. I was also told that staff reached out to Fonson today and they responded that they will comply. Personally, I hope this doesn't result in a delay on these projects because it seems they have quite a few employees that they need to get trained that they had not intended to get trained. And personally, I'm also really frustrated that was the case and that it took a council member digging into this to make this happen. It shouldn't, that they should be following our rules and our contracts. So that's it. I'm dogged about worker safety. I said it on when we passed our Workers' Memorial Day resolution, and I'm going to continue to be dogged about worker safety on our city projects.
Further discussion? Councilmember Medina. Oh, sorry. Councilmember Briggs.
Okay. And thanks to Councilmember Iyer for ensuring that piece was in place. I just wanted to, for a second, talk about the merits of the project, because this is, while it's a typical water main replacement and catch basin replacement, road resurfacing on West Madison Street and Madison Place, this is near Eberwhite School and Gretchen's house, and so there's some other kind of exciting and elements that are going to be put into place at the end of the resurfacing as well. There's going to be a turnaround. Well, there's going to be intersection improvements at Madison Street and Eberwhite Boulevard, including a mini roundabout, crosswalks, pavement markings, and signage, which is great to see those types of elements integrated into a road resurfacing project at the end. That should definitely help with traffic calming in that area and improve school safety. There's also the construction of a turnaround on the city-owned parcel at the south end of Madison Place. I think we maybe recall acquiring that parcel a while back. But so anyway, some exciting elements in this project to look forward to in the 5th Ward.
Further discussion? All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. Councilmember Ackman.
Sorry, I thought Councilmember Rodino was queued up, but I guess not. I guess I'm just kind of wondering, given the problem that came up and Councilmember Iyer having to do all of this review on Friday, how can we kind of improve the process going forward? And I don't know if that's really a question that Councilmember Iyer could answer, or staff, or maybe it's just rhetorical about improving the process so that we can kind of avoid this happening again and make sure that people are complying with our rules.
Would you like that to be interpreted as a question for the floor, or your interest in learning how we're going to?
Yeah, I think it's just an expression of interest. It does not need to be answered right now. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved with 10 council members present, all voting in the affirmative, thus satisfying the 8-vote requirement. CA3, resolution to approve a construction contract with Bailey Excavating, Inc. for the Brook Street Improvements Project in the amount of $3,445,709.21 and to appropriate $2,834,500 in contributing funds. Moved by Councilmember Cornell, seconded by Councilmember Ackman. Discussion, please, of CA3. Councilmember Cornell.
Thank you, Mayor. This particular stretch of road was one that I walked many times while knocking doors this summer. And, I think the size of this contract and the considerations, especially around the public feedback that we've heard around preserving trees and whatnot, there's just been a lot of public interest in it. And I was hoping that Mr. Steglitz or somebody else that Mr. Dohoney would prop up for us could introduce and give a brief overview of exactly what this project involves.
Mr. Hutchinson should be available for that.
Yes, Nick Hutchinson, City Engineer. I can give a brief overview of the project here. It includes a replacement of the water main on Brooks, resurfacing of the street as well. We will be filling in some sidewalk gaps along the stretch of Brooks, and also some stormwater improvements with detention. We'll also be reconfiguring the intersection at Vesper up at the north end, and that creates some space also for additional surface stormwater features as well.
Can I ask him a question? Okay, thank you. Mr. Hutchinson, can you talk a little bit more about the stormwater retention and some of the goals for that work that the city is awarding a contract for?
Sure. For that, I'm actually going to introduce Teresa Bridges here, who is our project manager for the project, and she's going to have a little bit more detail than I will on that, so I'll turn it over to her.
Good evening. I can help you understand about the stormwater that we've specified, stormwater management improvements that we've specified in the project. It includes some, detention within the Allen Creek watershed, near the upstream part of the watershed, and that means we'll be installing large 36-inch pipes, about 200 feet underground, in the vicinity of the intersection with Biding, and we'll restrict that flow and then send the flow down Biding in the storm sewer. It was otherwise going through undetained. So that will help the Allen Creek watershed. In addition, because we are capturing space, if you will, in the Sunset Vesper Brooks intersection, we have an opportunity to create a bioretention basin in which we are capturing some of the drainage from Vesper as well as Sunset, and that will help to improve quality of storm water that will then be released into the system that goes directly to the river.
Thank you, that's really helpful.
Councilmember?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, that is your time.
Okay.
But you might get a second shot. Further discussion? Councilmember Cornell.
I think really quickly, just to echo what Councilmember Briggs mentioned about the project that's happening over by Eberway Elementary, where my daughter goes. I'm really pleased to see some infrastructure improvements, not just a water main replacement, not just a resurfacing. I appreciate the thoughtfulness of staff on this, and I know that we hear a lot about flooding in that area, and I'm excited to see that being addressed here today, and I'm supportive of this.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved with 10 council members present, all voting in the affirmative, thus satisfying the 8-vote requirement. We now come to a set of public hearings. Public hearings are opportunities for members of the public to speak to council and the community about matters of municipal interest. To speak at to speak at a public hearing, one need not have signed up in advance, but your speech must relate to the specific subject matter of the public hearing. Speakers in all cases will have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time. Our clerk will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining and when your time has expired. When your time has expired, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Public hearing number 1, an ordinance to amend section 263 of chapter 229, water rates of title 2 of the code of the city of Ann Arbor. Is there anyone in house who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Hello, my name's Jeff Hayner. I live up on the north side. I don't think I know I didn't ever vote for a water or stormwater increase in my 4 years on council. And Mr. Mayor's been here since 2014. And along with all the other changes we've seen in our community since 2014, this will put us on track to have a doubling of our water rates and our stormwater rates by the end of the next fiscal year. So I don't know how many of you do any kind of investment or have ever heard of the rule of 72, but when you go 6-7% every year, 10 years, you're doubled. And that's where we're at. Now, we're not producing twice as much water. We're still doing up to 19 million some gallons a day. The cost for producing that water hasn't doubled in those 10 years. Inflation isn't running at 7%, although under the current local, state, and federal Democratic administrations, it certainly is pushing it this year. So why is it that we're doubling folks' water rates in less than a decade? And is there any consideration that these constant increases in fees for services and so on, that seem constant and unstoppable, aren't being considered as detrimental to our efforts to create a more affordable and equitable community? Because there's no way that the city can double cost, add $150 million in spending to its budget, and it's coming up, another hearing. double cost for water, jack up fees for every kind of service the city has to do, and say with a straight face that you're working towards equity and you care about people who live below the median income here. And I recognize that the median income here in Washtenaw County, the greater Ann Arbor area, is quite high because of our relationship with the university and the fact that Ann Arbor has always been sort of a wealthy white community. Be that as it may, there are many people in this community who struggle, and I think the lineup for our assisted housing proves that. So just as you go forward with jacking up costs to live in our community, consider that there's more than one way to make it an affordable community. And one way is to not jack up costs for everybody. The city's only responsibility, as far as I'm concerned, the number one responsibility of a municipality like the city of Ann Arbor is to provide safe, clean water. And you should be looking other places than the taxpayer's wallet for that. But
Thank you. Is there anyone else in House who would like to speak at this public hearing? Is there anyone online who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Mayor, I don't have any callers on the line with their hands raised.
Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. Public hearing number 2, an ordinance to amend Section 269 of Chapter 29, Stormwater Rates of Title II of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor. Is there anyone in House who would like to speak at this public hearing? Is there anyone online who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Mayor, I don't have any callers for this line, for this hearing.
Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. Public hearing number 3, a resolution to approve fiscal year 2024 fee adjustments for the public services area, engineering, public works, systems planning, water treatment units, and the fleet and facilities airport unit of the city administrator's office. Is there anyone who would like to speak? Is there anyone in House who would like to speak at this public hearing?
yeah, I'll do this one too, so folks out there in the community who haven't gone through this can get a sense of what happens here with the city. So my house was built in 1947, and even when it was built, and including the changes to code that have happened, zoning designations and height, area, and placement regulations that have changed since then, it was considered non-conforming. And so when I went to put an addition on my house that didn't increase the footprint of my house in any way, but was only above the existing non-conforming footprint, I was asked to appeal the rejection of that plan by submitting an application for the Zoning Board of Appeals. Now, when I called the person who administers that, and he said, I can tell by my GPS that you're about 13 to 16 inches off. I'm looking at the historical records of your house and so on, and it's clear that you're in front of that. And every place I've ever known, any place I've ever worked, this is an administrative fix because we recognize that this happens constantly. And if you look at the ZBA records, and those of you who serve on the ZBA, you'll see that this happens constantly. People come with this, their house was out of, and they approve it. And that's what happened to me. But on the way to that, I paid a $1,000 fee for that application privilege, and I also was required to get a $1,400 stake survey. They wouldn't accept the survey. And that I had to get a new stake survey. And it took quite a while to find someone during COVID to do that, but it was done. So $2,400 later, they went like that, which could have been done administratively. Now, I only bring that up as an example because I'm not sure people know that adding $2,400 to a very small project, could be a burden for someone. It could drag out a project. In my case, it certainly did. Should I pay a lawyer or ZBA or my architect, right? Well, when I look at the 36 pages of increases that you got coming here, including one that's real good for you, Jen, the airport unit. And we know she gave her buddy the airport contract for 30 years. Now they're going to jack up the rates he can charge. So I think that's really extra special. But when I look at that 36 pages of fees that are going up between 7 and 40%, I certainly understand from being on that side of the table that we have to do a fair analysis of what our costs are, and we have to set the fees that way. But if you took the time to read through this, you'd see that some of these fees are pretty astronomical, and some of these changes are going to benefit people who can afford them, and they're going to hurt people who can't. And so we're back to the same story again. How can we believe you when you say you want to have a community that's equitable and welcoming and affordable when you do things like this?
Thank you. Is there anyone else in House who would like to speak at this public hearing? Is there anyone online who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Caller with the phone number ending in 644, do you have a comment?
I have a comment for public hearing 5. Is this public hearing 5?
It is not. It is public hearing 3.
Then I will wait. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I don't have any other callers with their hands up for this hearing.
Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. Public hearing number 4, resolution to approve fiscal year 2024 fee adjustments for the community services area. Is there anyone in House who would like to speak at this public hearing? Is there anyone online who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Mayor, I don't have any callers with their hands up for this hearing.
Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. Public hearing number 5, resolution to adopt Ann Arbor City budget and related property tax millage rates for fiscal year 2024. Is there anyone in House who would like to speak at this public hearing? Just come on up.
Good evening, council members. I'm Kathleen Murphy. I live at 315 Linda Vista Street in Ward 5. I thank the council for giving us the opportunity tonight to make comments about the proposed budget. I speak for the organization Ann Arbor for Public Power. We are in the process of trying to create a public electric utility to replace DTE because it uses mainly fossil fuels to produce its energy and thus stands in the way of allowing Ann Arbor to reach its goal of net zero carbon emissions by 2030. It also has had terribly unreliable service this past winter. We'd like to put a placeholder, that is Ann Arbor for Public Power, we'd like to put a placeholder in the budget of $25,000, $250,000, which would go toward the valuation of DTE's assets if the feasibility study, which the council authorized and funded and is expected to be completed in June, looks positive. In other words, if the feasibility study looks positive, then the next step would be to have a more precise valuation done of DTE's assets. We anticipate, after talking with cities that have undergone the creation of public electric utilities, that this would be the cost, $250,000. Since we know that the results, since we won't know the results of the feasibility study until June, but the budget needs to be passed in 2 weeks, we're asking for a placeholder in the budget to ensure that funds are available if the feasibility study comes out to the council's liking and they want to go ahead with the valuation study. They would have then the money to do it. This is a relatively small ask in what has come to become a very large budget. I urge you to put this placeholder in the budget so it will be possible to follow through with this plan to establish a municipal electric utility in Ann Arbor if the feasibility study shows that the process can go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in House who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Good evening, council, and my fellow citizens of Ann Arbor and staff present. I am still Dr. Lauren Sargent. I still live on Ember Way in Ann Arbor, and my hair is still on fire because I'm still worried about climate change. And some of you might ask, what on earth does a municipal electric utility have to do with climate change? Well, we in Washtenaw 350 examined levers at every level where we could apply our efforts toward climate action, and we understood that we need to electrify everything and power it with renewables and efficiency. And we also concluded that the only practical, usable tool is a municipal electric utility, because right now we're stuck with DTE and they do not share our climate goals. They actively fight the just transition as the biggest lobbyist in Lansing with our money, and there's nothing we can do about it short of severing that relationship. The legislature and MPSC are de facto regulated by the investor-owned utilities, DTE, and consumers via their donations, their financial donations. Only 6 out of our current crop of legislators, most of them around this area, have refused to take their money. It's literally the fox guarding the hen house. And there's only one tool that can allow us to break free from them for electricity. And that is legal. As a municipal utility, it is legal in statute and the Michigan Constitution, and every city always has a right to its own electric franchise. Administrator Mahoney was very wise in setting aside some money in the budget for unanticipated and emergent costs. An additional feasibility study, should the original feasibility study that council already approved be positive, that it looks like this would be good financial decision for the city to do it, we've got to then have the money to value the assets, to do a feasibility study to value those assets. And something that I really appreciated in hearing the budget presentation was thinking about ways that we can put some stability and predictability into our budget. Right now, DTE gives us absolutely no control over it. One of the things that cities with municipal electric utilities enjoy is that budget stability. Holland actually had, with a nice electric municipal utility, had a problem twice within the last decade. How to return all the extra money that they got from the revenues from customers. They had to return money because they had too much. And they also pay things to the cities in which they reside called pilot fees, payment in lieu of taxes. And also, the electric utilities borrow money for infrastructure repairs at half the rate that DTE does. It's a budget no-brainer, so please save some space for step 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in House who would like to speak at this public hearing?
I really like Ken Garber. He's what some people on this body, I think, like the least, which is an environmentalist who can do math. So I found it useful to me when I read the budget every year, which I've been doing since, I don't know, 2012 or so, maybe even before that, to look at it in a comparative way and also look at it in a per capita way and also look for trends. And since I believe this is the only public hearing on the budget, which is just kind of shocking because 2018, I had to work in the fall of 2018 with the budget that was approved before me. In 2018, it was quite a bit smaller. I think it was 421 million, something like that. And this year it's 563, and I actually lost that bet. I thought it was going to be 570. So that's, not only is that $4,800 for every single person that lives in our community per year, it's a $442 million increase in only 6 years. That's quite a chunk of change. Our mills are only going up 1.9 mils or whatever, and that's because of the various ballot initiatives that were passed. If you look back at the 2018 thing, you can see they had placeholders in there for $627 million in alternative transportation funds, which is kind of shocking. I'm sure by the time this budget is done being being itself, in 2 years, it'll be $600 million. Just the budget itself. So in 2018, we had $2.5 million in one-time requests, and this year we have $4 million in one-time requests, $600,000 of that's for studies. There's lots of funds carried forward. I thought that was kind of interesting. In this budget, the thing I see the most, well, backing up one step. When I received my first budget cycle presentation in 2018, 2019, it was about 80 pages, and that's not the budget book, I'm talking about the presentation. And I watched yours, and it's about 8. And I hate to say this, but it kind of gave me the vibe that staff's got your number, We got 740 full-time equivalents in 2018, 840 this year. It's really something. That's where a lot of the money's going. Now, there seems to be a constant quest for revenue. We're positioning ourselves for long-term impact. And this constant quest for revenue fails to, 2 things aren't in here. 1 revenue and 1 expenditure. The one, if we're looking so hard for revenue, how come we didn't implement the pilot program that City Council said we were supposed to appoint a committee and study a pilot program, and there was even anticipated amounts of revenue coming from that. But that just fell between the cracks. And the expenditure that fell between the cracks was another council resolution that passed that said there's supposed to be money in this budget for an office of the ombudsperson. And that has failed to be in here too. So we have failures on both sides of this budget. And that is one of thousands I found in that book.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in House who would like to? Please.
Hi, my name is Gaia Kyle. I live at 522 Miller in Ann Arbor, and don't have a lot to say, although I just wanted to mention I'm here tonight along with my friends from Ann Arbor Public Power, supporting the laying aside some money for valuing the poles and wires. Thank you much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. Ken Garber again. I live in the 2nd Ward. And like Ms. Murphy, Ms. Sargent, and Mr. Kyle, I'm here also to request a budget placeholder for evaluation study of DTE's assets. Should the feasibility study lead you to decide to take the next step in the municipalization process? I should back up and say that I appreciate the tremendous amount of work that staff has put into this budget, especially Administrator Mahoney, but all down the line. I think, like Ms. Murphy said, this is a relatively small ask, $250,000. And not an actual allocation, simply a placeholder. This, you may think, this strikes me as pretty affordable, and it is that way because 5 Lakes is already doing much of the work in the ongoing feasibility study. Also, a lot of the infrastructure is open to visual inspection, and as a regulated utility, DTE has submitted a lot of information already to the state on asset condition and depreciation. So the system is not a black box. As I was sitting there, I remembered something I did read in the budget documents. It's a minor point, but DTE, if I'm remembering right, is raising our street light energy rates by 14% this year, or $300,000, and an additional double-digit increase next fiscal year, FY25. So this is more than we're asking just for this placeholder. I'm confident that a muni can deliver electricity at least as affordably as DTE, and as the previous speakers have said, has the potential to acquire electricity on the wholesale market that's 100% renewable. So I realize this is a controversial topic, and But I think this is a very minor and prudent step that you can take tonight. Actually, not tonight, but in the next 2 weeks as you complete the budget, to make an allowance for this possibility. I have 12 seconds left, and all I can say is that, again, I appreciate all your attention to the budget and also my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in House who'd like to speak at this public hearing? Is there anyone online who'd like to speak at this public hearing?
Mayor, we have several callers online. Caller with the phone number ending in 345. Phone number ending in 345, press star 6 to unmute your phone. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Kitty Kahn. I live in the 5th Ward. I am happy to see the West Park band shell in the budget. I hope the band shell will be repaired and resituated so it will serve its purpose and be used for concerts in the park once again. It's a matter of honoring our city's history. I'm surprised that the city plans to spend a lot of money to make Fuller Park into so-called bicentennial park. The city has said over and over that it has no money for more parks, and yet there seems to be plenty of money for this. Also, I have learned from Susan Weinberg, an Ann Arbor historian, that Fuller Park was indeed named for the Fuller family and not merely for the road. So I feel the name should not be changed. Again, it's a matter of honoring our city's history, especially in this bicentennial year. I noticed there is absolutely no money for the center of the city in the budget, although city residents mandated the center of the city when we passed Proposal A. On the other hand, there is money for the tree line trail, which was not voted on by city residents at all. I urge you to put money in the budget to clean up the toxins at 415 West Washington Street. This is city property, and the city has known about these toxins for years and has done nothing. And now we know that these toxins are spreading. The city wants to wait years until a developer comes forward, submits all the necessary plans and gets all the necessary approvals, and only then cleans it up. We can't wait that long. And the city would end up paying for the cleanup anyway via waived taxes. Those are our taxes. I would hope the city would value the health of its residents, the taxpayers, and would clean it up now. Lastly, I'm sorry that the Klein lot is no longer being viewed as a site for affordable housing, but rather for market rate housing. Quoting City Administrator Mahoney, he said, quote, "Now, admittedly, the use of the Klein lot for market rate
30 seconds.
affordable may get me uninvited to a Thanksgiving dinner table." Yes, indeed. What happened? I thought it was all about affordable housing, but now it's market rate. I really am looking forward to a long discussion on this budget, and I hope that the budget will be changed for the better before it is approved at your next meeting.
Time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle Hughes, do you have a comment?
Hi. So, yeah, I got 3 comments. One is I like the idea of the downtown safety patrols involving an EMT and someone from Supportive Connections. That's a great idea. I do not like the idea of police being involved in this also. If we want these safety patrols to be going around and helping people, it's going to be hard to find people. It's going to be hard to make people feel safe enough to be honest about the kind of help that they need if there's a police officer around. And even if the police, say, "Oh, we're not here to arrest people" or something like that when they're part of the project, when they're part of these patrols, that message will not be heard by the people on the street who they're talking to, and they will, and so it'll definitely inhibit people finding the right kind of help. There's point number 2. I saw that this budget increases the police budget by 1.75 FTE, and I don't know if that's because of the downtown safety patrols or not, but either way, I would like for us not to be increasing the police budget. I think that we'll see when we start implementing the unarmed response program that the need for police officers will drop by quite a bit, because the unarmed response will be doing a lot of the work that police used to do, and so I'd rather see some of the money, instead of being spent on police, spent on that. Finally, we have $1 million of unallocated budget money from marijuana taxes, and I would like to advocate for that to go towards reparations. The city has, throughout its history and up to the present, had policies that have prevented black families from building wealth, from building generational wealth, and meanwhile, white families have had opportunities to build wealth that black families have not. And that's not just some inevitable forces of history that caused that to happen. It was
30
decisions
seconds.
that were made by the city council. And so we should take that $1 million and put it towards reparations like they do in Evanston, Illinois. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 228, do you have a comment?
Hello.
Go ahead.
Hello. My name is Greg Woodring. I am the president of Ann Arbor for Public Power. I live at 1012 West Cross. I'm calling in once again to advocate for the $250,000 budget placeholder for the valuation study of a municipal utility. As many of the other callers have said, this is simply the next step in a process that the city has already begun. If the feasibility study is positive and it indicates that this would be a direction that would be financially beneficial for the city to pursue, then the next step in the process is to get a hard valuation on what the cost of DTE's assets would be, which would allow the city to then make an offer to DTE. It would help in any future legal fights over valuation, and it's just a prudent step in pursuing this process. If we did not put this placeholder in the budget and then the results were positive, it would simply mean that we need to take the money from somewhere else in the budget, and that would simply just be messy. It could be yet it would be poor governance. We hope that this is not a too controversial of a position to ask for. It seems like simply the prudent thing to do, considering that we have the study coming out next month and we don't know the results yet. But we know that the next step, if they're positive, would be to spend this money. When you look across the state of Michigan, across the country, you see that municipal utilities have cheaper rates, they have better reliability, and they have the ability to choose where their power comes from. With the city of Ann Arbor's climate goals, it is unrealistic to expect that we are going to be able to reach them with DTE as our primary power provider. Municipalization simply seems like the only realistic option to pursue the city's climate goals, while having the added benefit of increasing its reliability and over time lowering its costs. So I thank you for your time and for your consideration and for all the work that you've been putting into this budget. Thank you.
Thank you.
Phone number, caller with the phone number ending in 644, do you have a comment? Caller 644, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Kathy Boris. I live at 1726 Charlton in the 5th Ward. Bundled into this year's city budget is this year's capital improvement plan, the CIP. And one of the items included in the CIP is the extension of a runway at the Ann Arbor City Airport. Our A20 plan boasts the goal of carbon neutrality by the year 2030 and a strategy that focuses on reducing the miles we travel in our vehicles, regardless of type, by at least 50%. Having those two goals, it is ironic that an extension of the airport runway could be considered for inclusion in the CIP. Yes, the Ann Arbor Airport has a long and interesting history. Yes, it provides many benefits to Ann Arbor and the surrounding area. But that does not necessarily lead to the conclusion that extending a runway by 720 feet will be better for the community than the current configuration of the airport. This is because a longer runway is sure to enable use by larger jets and more jet traffic. Here's what the mayor says in his letter of welcome on page 5 of the A20 plan. Quote, every person, every homeowner, renter, student, visitor, community member, business owner, worker, youth, and elected leader has a significant role to play in achieving community-wide carbon neutrality, end quote. When the mayor says every person, I believe that every person must include those who travel to and from Ann Arbor by private or corporate jet. If that is not the case, if only persons of lesser financial means than jet travelers are asked to make sacrifices, then that certainly flies in the face of the admirable goals of the A20 plan. Some have claimed that the runway should be extended for reasons of safety, but no clear danger from the current configuration of the runways has been demonstrated. Others say they suspect that the true purpose of the proposed runway extension is to allow more and larger jets into Ann Arbor's airport at a time when we are fully aware of how highly polluting these jets are.
30 seconds.
While the extension of the runway would bring jobs, union jobs, so would the other items on the CIP. The CIP is a list of proposed capital improvements after all. I hope City Council will consider removing the proposed Ann Arbor Airport runway extension from the CIP so that projects of much broader community benefit can be moved forward instead, because an extended airport runway will benefit only the very wealthy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 936, do you have a comment? Press star 6 to unmute your phone. Go ahead.
Hello, I would just like to ask that you don't increase the police budget this year, and considering we already spend around $30 million on police, but also we are policed by University of Michigan Police, which has an additional $30-some million. So, and also with the downtown safety patrols, I would be much more comfortable if they did not include police officers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 556, do you have a comment?
Hi, Ralph McKee again, 5th Ward. I tried to go through the budget today, 427 pages. I spent a couple hours reviewing it, got through page 143. I have a lot of questions. Thus far, after eliminating your work sessions and related public comment, it looks like you haven't asked a single question, which I find very surprising. Let me ask a couple. The first one might be somewhere in here, but I didn't see the answer. Are we going to be using the climate millage to pay for any of the new sustainability FTEs? Next, How about an explanation of the statement on page 29? There it says we had 685 FTEs in 2013, 10 years ago, to propose 829 in 2024, 144 more people. That's an increase of 21%. Then it says, in general, the city government has become a more efficient organization. Really? Better maybe, doing more maybe, but more efficient? Come on, that's a serious stretch. This budget adds 27 FTEs. The city administrator has gone from 3 in 2021 to 5 now, to 8 next year. What are those 2 additional people already added doing? What are the next 3 going to do? Sustainability is adding 9. See page 143. I don't know why the budget uses a different number other places. The Housing Commission has gone from 30 in 2021 to 43 now, 47 next year, and 52 in 25. Should we be asking what are they going to be doing? The city administrator has said we need to pay more to be competitive, so 3% up to all non-union employees. That I think has a point. But with all these new hires, you're talking $3 million before the salary bumps even happen. How are we going to afford all this? Just a few extra questions from the report. The human resources goes from 2.3 million last year to 2.7 next year. Finance, 4 million in 2021 to 4.8 next year. District Court, 1.2 million 2022 to 1.5 next year. As they say, a few million here and there, you add up to real money. I think we really need to look at some of the efficiencies that could be made here. And I find it really hard to believe that that's been done in a serious way.
30 seconds.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 083, do you have a comment? Caller 083, press star 6 to unmute your phone. Go ahead.
Am I here? Am
Yes.
I actually unmuted?
Yes, you are.
Splendid. Delighted. I hate to be muted. I was muted at the public comment, but I will keep my comment to this. I also noted that there was no particular line in the budget to represent a development in the center of the city, and particularly the center of the city as a community commons, as the people did vote. And I was very impressed with the notion that the public power people put, anticipating a positive development in these ideas, that there should be a placeholder in the budget. And I hope that there could be a placeholder in the development of the center of the city, particularly as there is public and private money raised to have a feasibility design, planning study done to help us figure out just what is desirable. While I'm not so enthusiastic about outsourcing creativity, I think it would be desirable. There could be an opportunity for people to anticipate the outcome of this feasibility and planning study is actually having a programmatic support of some sort agreeing to be matched. One aspect for the placeholder would be some education for the city council members and the general public as to what is the commons, commonly pooled resources self-managed by the users. This is an idea that is not new, it's as old as history. And the Nobel Prize in Economics, as I think I've told people, was given to the research that put together 5,000 studies all over the world as to how when public resources and commonly pooled resources and public and private and what people give of their money and land and talent and so on are managed by the users rather than either by the government or by some private corporation, the resources are better used. So that's why it's important to be some education for the council people and for the general public as to what is the commons. So I hope that you will see a placeholder for the development of the commons, and also to actually put some staff time on self-education about what are these ideas that are developing all over the world as a new frame of urbanism that allows public participation much more and mutual aid, which we greatly need, and the bringing of knowledge and science into public planning. It would be a great help. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Adam Juskevich, do you have a comment?
Hi, this is Adam Juskevich in the 4th Ward. And I would just like to support a couple of other commenters' ideas. Number one, to remove police from the downtown safety patrols. I think that would be a great place for our unarmed responders once that program is in place. But I don't think it's appropriate for police officers to be joining those patrols. And likewise, I don't really see a need for hiring more police officers. I also do like the idea of spending the unallocated $1 million on reparations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number 661, do you have a comment? Phone number ending in 661, press star 8, go ahead.
Hello? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah. Hello, City Council. My name is Gus Teschke, and I live at 313 Montgomery. First, I'd like to thank City Council for funding the Phase 1 feasibility study for a full public electric utility. This utility would completely replace DTE and provide 100% reliable and renewable power for all residents of Ann Arbor. And we need the results of this study to decide whether to move forward. The report will be ready in June, and I think the odds are good that it will show that a public electric utility is feasible. Second, I urge City Council to create a $250,000 budgetary placeholder for a valuation study for this full public electric utility, because it puts a price on DTE's electric lines in Ann Arbor in preparation to buying them. The valuation study is the next step in the process. It's also called a Phase 2 feasibility study. Since the Phase 1 feasibility study will not be done until next month, but you're passing the budget this month, it would be easier just to create this $250,000 placeholder now and avoid scrambling for money later. Okay, third, I'd like to say that DTE's power in my area on the west side was out for 3 days in the February ice storm. My house went down to 46 degrees before power was restored. It was amazing. It was an amazingly stressful and avoidable experience. About 80,000 Ann Arbor residents lost power in that storm, in the winter, in the bitter cold, and many for 5 days or more. In my view, the danger, the damage, the cost, and the stress caused by DTE's unreliable electric service disqualifies that corporation from providing power to Ann Arbor. We require a dependable electric service, and luckily the state constitution gives us that option, to have a public electric utility that completely replaces DTE. I look forward to that. I want DTE out of here. Please create a $250,000 budget placeholder so that we can take the next step in creating a public electric utility. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I don't have any other callers on the line with their hands up.
Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. We have before us the regular session meeting minutes of April 17, 2023. We have a motion to approve these minutes, moved by Councilmember Watson, seconded by Councilmember Dish. Discussion, please, of the minutes. A1. All in favor? Opposed? Minutes are approved. B1, an ordinance to amend Section 263 of Chapter 29, Water Rates of Title II of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor, moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Councilmember Watson. Discussion, please, of B1. Councilmember Dish.
Do we have a staff introduction here? Or, no, I'm so sorry. We have a staff introduction for the bond. But I will take this moment, nonetheless, to
Councilmember introduction.
staff if they could respond to an earlier comment from the public hearing. And I'd like to ask staff to explain what expenses are motivating this year's water rate increases. Are there projects or infrastructure improvements pending?
Ms. Pashan should be available to respond to your question.
John, you want me to address that question?
If you please.
Okay. So you can hear me okay?
We can. Thank you.
Brian Steglitz, hello, council, mayor, city administrator, public services area administrator. The question was about what projects may be leading to be incorporated in the rates that are projected for the coming year. Is that the question?
Yes.
So our rates are built out around a variety of things. Our operational expenses are one component, but it's also what our capital needs are. So debt service on bonds, there are projects incorporated in terms of our planning for the coming fiscal year that are captured in the rates. So it has to do with both our operational and capital needs. You know, as I'm going to be doing the introduction for the item C1, but I'll talk a little bit about some of the projects that are associated with that bond issue. But we have a pretty aggressive capital improvement plan. I think that there's almost $10 million in this coming fiscal year. I might need to get Mr. Ader, Mr. Prashant to confirm that number. I don't have it in front of me. But all of those pieces together are what are built into our rate projections.
You have 5 seconds. Thank you. Further discussion? Councilmember Dish. Oh, was it Chris? Oh.
Well, no, I thought Councilmember Briggs wasn't like you, but.
No, sorry.
Councilmember.
Yeah, Mr. Steglitz, I was struck in your budget presentation when you talked about the infrastructure, that the water infrastructure that was projected to have a 100-year lifespan, and a lot of that being put in during the 10s and 20s, and now we're coming up to the 2010s and 2020s. Could you speak a little bit about that? And I know that there was also a big spike in the water infrastructure created in the 50s and 60s too, which there might be some stuff with shorter lifespans there. So could you kind of clarify that a little better than I just did?
Sure. So what I discussed, I had a slide in the budget presentation, was on the age of some of our buried infrastructure. And if you look at when the infrastructure was put in and what the expected life is, you'll see over the next decade or so, the expected life reaching its terminal point for some of our buried infrastructure. So we need to be positioned to begin or continue replacing some of that. You'll see a lot of that in the capital plan for the next 4 years or so. There are about 20 water main projects, distribution projects incorporated in the budget, which are part of what the bond issue will be used for. Again, I'll be talking about in Q1. So, we anticipate typically when we put pipe in the ground that it's going to last about 100 years. So that means we should be replacing about 1% a year to stay on top of our reinvestment needs. So that is what's driving a lot of the current and future rate projections, in addition to the improvements we need to make at the water plant, which was built in the 1930s and is also reaching the end portions of its life.
Thank you.
Councilmember Dish.
So is it fair to say that our water costs, the cost of providing water actually does go up because we've been subsidized by infrastructure that was put in 100 years ago, and now we are needing to replace that, and we're needing to catch up with some deferred replacement there. People haven't always been as conscientious about keeping up with that replacement rate as we are being today. Is that correct?
I think that's a fair statement.
Further discussion? We'll say that one of our highest obligations is to provide clean, safe, delicious drinking water to all members of our community, and we cannot do that without adequate and up-to-date and constantly maintained water distribution infrastructure, water treatment infrastructure. What we're doing here with today's water rates is we are continuing to keep our promise to provide clean water to residents, both today and in the future. We are properly capitalizing our program, our system, ensuring that it will be here improving for decades to come. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. B2, an ordinance to amend Section 269 of Chapter 29, Stormwater Rates of Title II of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor. Moved by Councilmember Iyer, second by Councilmember Briggs. Discussion, please, of B2. Councilmember Briggs.
I'd like to ask a similar question around the stormwater rates, if staff might be able to provide a little bit of information about how these funds will be used.
Mr. Steglitz, go ahead.
I apologize, I think my video keeps freezing, but I can hear you all. Similarly with our stormwater rates, we have the capital needs are in a lot of cases driving what the rate increases are. And again, significant number of projects included in our capital improvement plan, obviously also associated with the stormwater system is just managing all of the infrastructure. So those are things like maintaining the stormwater infrastructure, cleaning, surveying, and TVing to make sure that the pipes are clear and can pass the flows that they need to. So, but I would say that the capital needs are a significant element in terms of what's driving the rate projections for the future. I don't have specific projects at my fingertips, but I can provide that, and that's something the council wants to do.
Thank you. Councilmember Dish.
Thank you. I would just like to remind people who are having trouble paying their utility bills to make use of the County Barrier Busters program if they meet the eligibility requirements. And you can find that just by putting in barrierbusterswashtenaw.org. And I wanted to note also that Washtenaw County makes it very easy for people who are not having trouble paying their utilities to contribute to the Barrier Busters Fund on that same page.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. C1, an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of water supply system revenue bonds, Series 2023, the amount of $40 million. Moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Councilmember Redina. Discussion, please, of C1. I believe we have a staff introduction.
We do, Mayor. Mr. Steglitz will handle this for us.
Mr. Steglitz, you have the con.
Thank you. I will kick this off, and Ms. Prashant and Mr. Ader are here to help support in case there's questions that I may not be able to answer. This bond is focused on projects that go through fiscal year 26. There's about 20 of them. They are all distribution system focused, so mostly water main projects, but also some valve replacements in the distribution system. It's typical and best practice for us to use bonds to pay for future capital projects needs like this. And the reason is that's best practice is because the benefits of these investments are realized by future water customers. And through the bonding process, as we pay the bonds back through our water rates, future customers are paying for that additional infrastructure. So that's typical in best practice and the reasons why we use issuing debt to cover these types of projects. We also have other tools in our toolbox besides just issuing our own, by issuing bonds by the city, but we look at grant programs. We've been successful recently. In fact, we just recently was awarded one from the state of Michigan to help do some work at the water treatment plant, address associated with our filters. We also use revolving loan fund programs. We've been successful in achieving or getting funds from recently from the state of Michigan. And we'll continue to pursue those types of options that will be available to us when we see projects that fit and we think will score well. The projects that we've identified for this water revenue bond, again, which are typically water main projects, typically do not score well through the state's ranking system. So we tend not to submit these types of projects for that type of funding. But when we're doing projects that have a larger benefit for the whole water system, those will score better through the state's ranking system, and those we will continue to put through in order to get the preferred rates that are associated with the state's program. The bonds are, one other question that was raised by one of the council members was how are the bonds paid back, and they are paid back through future water rates. I think I mentioned that already. The other portion of utilizing bonds is it helps us meet also our financial metrics for the utility. So we are looking at things like debt coverage ratios to make sure we can meet those in order to make sure we can maintain the bond ratings that we want so we can get good rates when we go to market. So we factor in these financial metrics also into the decisions on how much to bond for and when to also go out to the market to bond. I guess the last thing I'll add, and I can open it up and see if there's any other questions, is that we did also just put out in our monthly newsletter, which is the Ann Arbor Water newsletter, a description that you can share about the bond and the anticipated use and how we will fund it. That was requested of one of the council members also, so that can be shared with constituents if desired, and that went out to council.
Thank you. Further communication or further discussion? Roll call vote, please, starting with Councilmember Harrison.
Here.
Councilmember Harrison?
That's all right.
I'm sorry. Yes. Yes. It's been a long day. Yes.
Councilmember Song?
Yes.
Councilmember Watson?
Yes.
Councilmember Redina?
Yes.
Councilmember Ghazi Edwin? Absent. Mayor Taylor?
Yes.
Councilmember Iyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Ackman?
Yes.
Councilmember Briggs?
Yes.
Councilmember Cornell?
Yes.
Councilmember Dish?
Yes.
Motion carries.
DC1, resolution updating the City of Ann Arbor City Council Policy Agenda Committee, moved by Councilmember Iyer, seconded by Councilmember Watson. Discussion, please, of DC1. All in favor? I'm sorry, Councilmember Watson. My apologies.
I just wanted to, since I sit on the Policy Agenda Committee, I wanted to explain a bit. This basically lines up the timing of the Policy Agenda Committee's recommendations to line up with the legislative cycle, which is every 2 years as opposed to every 1 year. So we wanted to time it with the new delegations arriving in Washington and Lansing. And yeah, so that's really the major portion of it. And then the other portion is that we will be soliciting input from committees and commissions from time to time rather than annually, just to line up with, to better line up with the new legislative bodies. So.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. DC2, resolution to enter a lease with Lee Malbecht to the farm of the Maziel property. Moved by Councilmember Redina, second by Councilmember Dish. Discussion, please, of DC2. Councilmember Redina.
Thanks, Mayor Taylor. Just very briefly, this is pretty straightforward in the resolution, but this is leasing our buy, protect, sell property, better known as Maziel Farms, our Maziel property, 54 acres, the purchase of which was approved by council in May of 2022. And this lease is just going to ensure that the stewardship of the land as we transition ownership to a new farmer. So I really just want to thank our Greenbelt staff for all of their continued work here and to make sure that this property is taken care of and ready for a transition. So thanks.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved with 10 council members present, all voting in the affirmative, thus satisfying the 8-vote requirement. DB1, resolution to dissolve the Brownfields Plan Review Committee. Moved by Councilmember Iyer, second by Councilmember Cornell. Discussion, please, of DB1. Councilmember Dish.
Yeah, I want to continue the excellent explanation that was begun by Councilmember Iyer earlier, and just remind everyone that the Brownfields Plan Review Committee is merely a subset of council. There are no members other than council members on it, and initially, it filled a gap. Council established the Brownfield Plan when agreements were negotiated, the Brownfield Plan Review Committee, when agreements were negotiated project by project, which is to say that standard policy guidelines had not yet been specified. So the committee served the function of making those guidelines up as it went along. They negotiated brownfield agreements and then sent them along to City Council for approval. Since 2019, when Council adopted a policy that prescribed standards guiding these brownfield tax incentive agreements, there was no longer a gap for the review committee to fill. We had actually told ourselves how to do that work. And so the review committee was essentially part of the council being instructed by the whole council on what to do to give to the whole council to approve. You see my point. There's a little redundancy, if not a little bit of schizophrenia there. So I shouldn't be light about that. So anyway, the policy specifies the environmental and non-environmental activities that are and are not eligible for reimbursement. Codified rules, such as we enacted in 2019, play an important part in oversight because they provide consistent common standards that any reviewing body and the public must use in evaluating brownfield agreements. Dissolving the review committee makes no reduction or limitation of council oversight. There is no punting or shirking of responsibility. The review committee has never been the committee of final review. It is now and will remain the responsibility of City Council to review brownfield agreements for projects within the City of Ann Arbor and deny or approve them. Council as a body will now act, as Councilmember Iyer explained earlier, with the benefit of a presentation from the developer. Any plan approved by City Council will proceed to the county for final approval. Nothing is being ceded to the county. The county is now and will remain in the role, it is now and will remain the role of the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners to give final approval to any brownfield plan that comes before it. And what's more, the Board of Commissioners always convenes a public hearing for every brownfield plan agreement in the county and provides notice to every taxing jurisdiction. So whether the review committee is dissolved or not, all affected jurisdictions will be noticed and will have an opportunity to evaluate and comment on every county brownfield agreement. If we dissolve the review committee, we will eliminate one thing only, which is the inefficient use of a precious resource, and I am talking about the time and effort of our planning staff and development team.
Councilmember Iyer, or pardon me, Councilmember Cornell.
Move my microphone. I'm so fired up about this. Just to clear up some, I think, misinformation that's been shared. The Michigan Strategic Funds Brownfield Program uses tax incremental financing to reimburse brownfield-related costs that are incurred when developing contaminated, functionally obsolete, blighted, historic, or other here's the key word, eligible properties. By increasing the taxable value of the properties, the Brownfield program generates increased tax revenue and has a positive, significant impact on the taxable values of surrounding properties. I think a couple really important things to note is that the incentive amount is not guaranteed. It is only realized if the investment achieves the anticipated increase in property value. So the cause and effect need to match in order for that incentive to be awarded. The developer must pay for the improvements to the site, and then property taxes must be paid each year. This is not a handout. Once the Brownfield plan reimbursement is complete, the increased property taxes that would not exist without the redevelopment taking place begin going directly to all of the taxing jurisdictions, city, county, and state. TIF programs are really common in economic development. We have other examples of TIF tax incremental financing being used here in the city of Ann Arbor. And in every single case where TIF dollars are applied, there are very clear parameters around what a qualifying project is, clear methods to evaluate the success of a project in order for those dollars to be awarded. This is important. There's no ambiguity when it comes to awarding TIF dollars, regardless of the program from which those dollars are granted. There's also no ambiguity around the Brownfield TIF being an important economic development tool that's not unique to Ann Arbor, Michigan, or the country. It's really common. What isn't common is to suggest that there's something irresponsible, untoward, short-sighted, uninformed about this move by City Council. Quite candidly, it feels like conspiracy theory fodder around a program that is literally designed to provide significant economic benefit to the city. Any Brownfield project that the city would take on still requires City Council approval. That can't be stated more. To suggest dissolving this committee removes oversight from the process is dishonest at worst. And at best, it shows a complete and fundamental lack of knowledge around the process itself. Thank you.
Further discussion? Yep. Councilmember Iyer.
Thanks. I already addressed this earlier, so I just briefly want to note that as a member of the potentially dissolving committee, I had the opportunity to sit in on one discussion, and that was regarding the Villages project. And I just want to make a note of the fact that the substantive discussion that happened during that small meeting that was really not attended by the public. I don't think anyone, you were there. That's right, but you were the only person. You know, we received the presentation from the developer, and then we had a substantive discussion. And then when it came to council, it was not so substantive because that had already taken place, and the recommendation came here. I want that substantive discussion to happen here at the council table, and that is where it will happen when we, if this passes and we do dissolve that and bring that discussion to the council as a whole.
Councilmember Watson.
I had a constituent ask me about this during my most recent coffee hour, so I posed some questions to staff, and I'm going to say I'm going to be supporting this tonight. Since the committee is only composed of 4 council members, and there are no members of the public on this committee, no additional expertise is added at that stage. And there's also no way for staff to know if the opinion of those 4 council members represents a consensus opinion of council or even the majority of opinion of council. So eliminating this commission saves staff time, and it lets the Brownfield plan be presented to the entire council at once rather than 4 members. And because the 2019 policy creates a framework, council could still disagree, but the debate can happen at the council table rather than in this commission. So I'll be supporting this.
Further discussion? Councilmember Briggs.
I think most of the points that I wanted to make have been made in terms of this is not, there's been desire to make sure that we have more scrutiny, particularly of certain elements of of the Brownfield plans. This is not going to reduce the level of scrutiny. I think the hope is for this body is that we'll provide better information to the entire body so that we can have that scrutiny happening in a public space. So I think that, we'll see benefits there. This isn't about the burden to council members. There isn't a burden to council members. This meeting, this group meets very infrequently. This is about sort of other parts of the process that we're trying to provide greater efficiency in. But the piece that I think that maybe hasn't been mentioned yet tonight is that this wasn't the determination of the new council at the first committee. This was considered over 2 council bodies. So staff came to the Brownfield subcommittee when I served on it last year and said, hey, we're thinking about this. What do you think? And that was a different council body. And there was, at that time, agreement that made sense, but staff didn't act then. They provided more information. It came to another council body. And across 2 council bodies, now this has been considered. Obviously, the final vote is with us. But I remember Kathy Griswold sitting on that committee. And I don't recall objections being raised either. So anyway, I am comfortable with moving forward with this tonight, and I hope this will be an improvement to the process.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. Do we have the pleasure of a closed session today?
Yes, Mayor Taylor, I would like to request a closed session under MCL 15.268, Section 8E, regarding the litigation Platt Convenience, Inc. versus the City of Ann Arbor, Michigan Court of Appeals, case number 359013, and also under Section 8H, regarding a privileged and confidential memorandum that was provided to council today, May 1st, 2023. Thank you.
Thank you very much. May I have a motion to go into closed session for the purposes stated? Moved by Councilmember Ackman, second by Councilmember Cornell. Discussion? Roll call vote, please, starting with Councilmember Harrison.
Councilmember Harrison?
Yes.
Councilmember Song?
Yes.
Councilmember Watson?
Yes.
Councilmember Radina?
Yes.
Councilmember Ghazi Edwin? Absent. Mayor Taylor?
Yes.
Councilmember Iyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Ackman?
Yes.
Councilmember Briggs?
Yes.
Councilmember Cornell?
Yes.
Councilmember Dish?
Yes.
Motion carried.
We're in closed session. Let's meet upstairs at 9:30. We're back after a closed session. May I have a motion, please, to go back into open session? Moved by Councilmember Ira, seconded by Councilmember Cornell. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? We are back in open session. May I have a motion, please, to open up the agenda? Moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Councilmember Medina. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? It's approved. May I have a motion, please, to amend the agenda to add resolution
To direct the city attorney to provide a public legal opinion regarding the recent Ninth Court decision in California Restaurant Association versus City of Berkeley, dated April 17th, 2023.
Moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Councilmember Watson. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? The agenda is amended. Councilmember Dish, would you care to move that motion?
I move the motion to direct the city attorney to provide a public legal opinion regarding the recent Ninth Circuit Court decision in California Restaurant Association versus City of Berkeley, April 17th, 2023.
Seconded by Councilmember Watson. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? The resolution is approved. May I have a motion, please, to approve the clerk's report of communications, petitions, and referrals? Moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Councilmember Watson. We're just going to roll with those two. Discussion of the clerk's report. All in favor? Opposed? The clerk's report is approved. Ms. Cord, do we have the pleasure of communications from our city attorney today?
No, thank you.
Well, that is perhaps someday. In the absence of public comment overflow, may I have a motion to adjourn, please? Moved by Councilmember Cornell, seconded by Councilmember Ackman. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? We're adjourned.